Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar today, whereby we're going to talk through some of the routes to procurement for flexible power. So this is WPD's customer-facing brand for demand-side response services. Within this webinar, we're going to be talking through how you can get involved with our second cycle of procurement in 2019 and hopefully provide some of the flexibility services that we're seeking to satisfy the 184 megawatts worth of demand-side response services that we're looking to contract with over the next few weeks. So we're just going to give it a minute or so for a few other people to attend and dial in and make sure that everyone's audio and visual properties of the webinar are working. And then we'll kick off with the presentation in the main. Thank you. Okay, everyone. My name is Ben Godfrey. I'm the Network Strategy Manager for Western Power Distribution. Today I'm joined by Helen.
Hi, I'm Helen Thornton. I'm the Flexible Power Commercial Officer. I'll give you a bit of detail around the steps that are required to participate in this cycle of procurement.
Great. So we've got presentations, probably going to be about sort of 30 to 40 minutes worth of content. And then with a chance of Q&A at the end. You're able any time within this presentation to ask questions via the GoToWebinar question tab. So if you want any further clarifications or for us to expand a bit on the slide content as we're going through, then by all means shout those questions out and we can take them as we go. What we're going to be doing is go through some of the various different routes to participation and provide a bit more detail about how you can get involved with this cycle too. So the slides that we're going to go through are already available on our website, and a recording of the webinar will be available later on in the week once we've completed that. So if there are any questions that you've got, you can submit them. If we don't get a chance to go through all the questions, then we'll put them up on a kind of FAQ type fact sheet at the end of today's webinar and collect responses to all those questions. So we're going to go through how you can get involved with providing services in some of the constraint managed zones. And so hopefully that'll give you a better understanding. But if there's some specific points that you really wanted a face-to-face chat with, then we've also got the ability to come and see us down in London on the 7th of August, where we've got a kind of face-to-face flexibility session, whereby we've got bookable hour-long appointments also with our flex gurus within that day. So if you wanted to have a face-to-face chat with us, please do email in WPD Flexible Power at westernpower.co.uk. We can make that happen. So today I'm going to go through the constraint managed zones that are included within this procurement cycle, look at the locations, the availability windows and the types of products that we're seeking. Then Helen will go through some more details on the procurement process. And then I'll step back in and talk about the contract award arrangements and the pricing and how we settle on a clearing price for those particular zones. And then we dive into a bit more detail about the timeline, some of the additional information, and then the operational aspects post-award. So in terms of the CMZs, we've got 17 CMZs, constraint managed zones, with a peak megawatt requirement of 184. So this is the largest amount of services that we've got to date, and the coverage of our flexibility across our networks is growing as we seek to find other ways to manage the network rather than just relying on traditional reinforcement. So 15 of those are existing CMZs with ongoing requirements, and we've got some 2 new requirements in Camborne, Hale area, and on the Isles of Scilly as well. So each constraint managed zone has its own geographically bounded area, which allows you to allows those people within that area to participate with the services, and then each of those areas also has a particular time of day, month of the year, an annual megawatt hours worth of requirement, and we detail all that information on the flexiblepower.co.uk/our schemes. That's a really good wealth of information where you can look at the different geographic areas where our constraints are manifesting and understand the power requirements and the energy requirements across the year. We're also advertising our flexibility through Piclo and through the Cornwall local energy market as well. So there are 2 additional routes into to providing services. So if you're registering through one of those platforms, then as soon as you match and you're able to kind of be geographically pre-qualified in that particular area, then your details will pass through to us, and we can start the flexible power procurement process by contacting you. So to reinforce that point, we're not doing any of the competitions or price settling through Piclo. So for those people who want to participate with flexible power, that additional stage has to be done through our regular flexible power procurement process. So within this current procurement cycle, then you can check to see whether the postcodes of your assets are in the right locations by looking at the postcode checker on our website, and you can also scroll through the interactive geographic map there to locate your assets by postcode or by other method, and determine whether or not you can be included within that geographic area. And then if you dive down into one of those constraint managed zones, you will see one of these maps and graphs with the relevant information dictating about the times of day and the days of the week and the months of the year when we have a requirement for availability. And then alongside, in the little legend box, we have the numbers of megawatt hours utilisation that we expect will be required in those areas, and that can give you a bit of an understanding about what the type of value that those services might be able to provide back to you. So if you wanted something to print off and have a separate understanding of the requirements through a PDF format, then we have got a single document that you can download, and that just gives you a summary information of all the things that are available on that website. Diving down into a little bit more of the detail, here are all the different zones. Some of them have summer requirements, some of them have winter requirements, some of them have a mixture of both as well. And those are little geographic areas with a particular megawatt peak as well. To date, we're not seeking any services in South Wales, but that will be something that we'll be looking to procure flexibility in the first half of next year to solve some of the constraints that we might be facing in the future in South Wales. So if you click on, if you look through that report, then there is some information on the types of products that we're servicing, that we're seeking in those areas, and the size of the requirement. So for this one here, for the Banbury area, then we're looking for both dynamic and restore products in the summer for a maximum size of 8.1 megawatts. We're actually looking for the restore product across the whole of our licence areas, and particularly coupled to where we've got dynamic and secure needs for flexibility. so that Restore is an additional product that you can pick up, as well as either the Secure or the Dynamic, which have more hours of utilisation and provide a bit of a better revenue stream. So if you look at the availability graphs that we've included in this document, but are also available on that website, then you can see that the scale of that on the left-hand side is in megawatts, so how many megawatt peak we expect to be needing in that area. And then for each half an hour across a daily profile, we describe how much availability we might need within that month. We also describe whether it's just a Monday to Friday service or a full week service as well, to see what the availability is. So in terms of those products, these products have now been industry standardized through ENA's Open Networks platform project, and there are 4 products that have been described at an industry level, and we are taking forward 3 of these products, so we think that they best fit our network. So these are the pre-fault constraint management, the post-fault constraint management, and the restoration support. And we've catchily named these Secure, Dynamic, and Restore. So the difference between these products is really about what sort of constraints they can mitigate and the times when we might use these. So our Secure product, as it's a pre-fault constraint management, we will be using this pretty much throughout the year whenever we think that constraint is going to manifest. It has a very high likelihood we're going to be using this. So basically, we will presume that there is going to be a network exceedance in this area if we don't use this service. So we pretty much guarantee that we're going to be calling upon hours through the Secure products, almost to 100% of what we've the information that we're putting out to the market in terms of utilisation. Consequently, there is a higher availability payment, this arming payment, because we anticipate a very high level of, or very high correlation between availability and utilisation, and there's a lower utilisation top-up just to rebalance off when we do call you on. The Dynamic service is a post-fault constraint management product, and this basically means that the constraint only manifests when we have a fault or an adjacent outage. Now, some of these outages will be planned, so we can know when they're going to happen in advance and make sure that we're providing the right information out to the market, and that is certainly the case for the services that we're signposting at the moment. But also there will be periods of the year whereby the Dynamic service is only required post-fault. So as we can't guarantee when those faults are going to happen, unfortunately, then we split the financial revenue with a low availability payment, so just one to keep the assets involved and awaiting the dispatch signal, and then a higher utilisation payment. And finally, the Restore product. This is really just when a significant issue is impacting on a network above the normal security standards, and it's really, we want to utilise the flexibility to provide a much better service to our customers and reduce the customer minutes lost for outages on a network that may be above the usual security planning standards. So we don't anticipate to call the Restore product off very much at all, and it really will be for very few infrequent times when we actually call the Restore service on. So it's not a great one for generating revenue, but it's a very valuable service that we can utilise if there are assets that are able to do that and are made available to us. So there's no availability payment, but there is a premium utilisation payment. So basically, if we have a fault in an area and you are available to be called upon and provide a response, then we will definitely pay you a significant amount of money to do that. Onto the procurement process, so I'll let Helen jump in and provide a bit more detail about how you can actually get involved and sign up to these services.
Thanks, Ben. So there's kind of two stages to getting involved with the procurement process, and the first is to join our Dynamic Purchasing Register, our DPS. Anybody can join the DPS that is interested in participating in one of the CMZs now or perhaps in the future. And the first thing to do that is to respond to our PIN notice, our periodic indicative notice, where we've published our intention of what we intend to procure on the official journal, and that does need to be responded to for people to register their interest. Once that's been received, we will send you a pre-qualification questionnaire. Those documents can be filled in with your company details and some detail around the assets if you have that information available at the time. Once that's returned to us, then you are officially registered onto our DPS register. Once you're on the DPS register, this means that you are eligible to respond to any invitation to tender that we issue throughout the course of the year, and if you renew your DPS registration on an annual basis, which is quite easy to do once you've got your initial registration, then you will continue to receive invitation to tender for ongoing years. So we'll send you an email notification when any CMZs open up for tender. You can then have a look on the interactive map and see if you've got any sites that fall within the CMZ boundary areas, and then you can go ahead and complete the ITT documentation. I'll just go through a little more detail around the aspects of all those stages. So the DPS register, first of all, is where we hold a record of all the parties that have completed the pre-qualification process and are therefore eligible to tender for any flexibility demand response services, like I said, in any of the existing zones, and it also for future zones that we may not have announced yet. So joining the DPS, we don't assess on any technical ability or geographical location. We only require you to complete the necessary forms, basic company information, or information about the person that wishes to tender, and some sort of mandatory procurement questions, which again are pretty basic. And we only assess geographical and technical ability at the ITT, invitation to tender stage. So we will provide DPS registration to everybody who completes all the mandatory sections of the PIN and PQQ. You'll be notified of all tenders moving forward, and like I said, you can renew that DPS registration annually, but once you set up your initial DPS registration, it's quite simple to do. So as I said, the first thing to do is respond to the PIN notice. It's an online form that needs to be completed. The link is available there. It's on our website as well. I tend to put it on most of the emails that I circulate out to our stakeholder list. But these slides are available on our tools and documents page as well if you wanted to get the link from there. So the first thing is to click on that link, and that will take you to set up your own account in our online procurement system. So this is just some screenshots of what our procurement system looks like. So you would click on that link, click on the Flexible Power Demand Response Services link, and that would take you to where you can download the supporting document for the PIN, which gives you a lot more information about some of the mandatory sections that are in the PIN and the PQQ, and you click on the Register Intent to Participate. That then takes you to the next screen where you can create your own account with your email and create a password, or if you have an existing account, you can log into your existing account. And as I said before, it's quite simple. You just fill in those company name and company detail sections at the bottom, and then that notifies us that you've completed the PIN. And then in return to that, we will send you the pre-qualification questionnaire documents. There's 3 documents that are included in that. So the first one is the guideline document. The second one is sort of a spreadsheet form that needs completing, and the last one is our UCR questions, and these are mandatory procurement questions that need to be completed. as I said before, you only need to do this registration once, and then you can renew it annually. So you can, if your details change, or you want to add in additions or amendments to it, you can do that at the renewal stage, but you can also do that any time during your registration just by contacting us. So if you have them available, you can provide details of your sites and assets within the PQQ, although that isn't one of the mandatory sections. So some people may not have assets at this time, or may not have identified assets that match with one of our existing CMZs. But really, if you've got assets anywhere within Western Power Distribution's network area, you can give us this information at that time if you wanted to. Once you've sent that to us, we'll notify you within 10 working days that we've received that and successfully added you to our dynamic purchasing register. So here's just a couple of screenshots of what the PQQ documentation looks like. So as I said before, only Section 1 and Section 3 acceptance of the UCR questions is mandatory in there. But like I said, if you do have assets within our distribution area, then you can provide those to us in Section 2 there, and it is useful for us to have that information early on if possible. But like I said, it's not mandatory, and if you don't have that information, you don't need to provide it to us at this stage. Once your PQQ is complete and we've notified you that you've been added to the register, you'll then receive every invitation to tender that we release throughout the time of your registration. The ITT documentation that comes out is just one document that needs to be completed per contracting party. So if you are intending on tendering within multiple CMZs, lots of different assets in different zones, then you can do that all within the one tender document. It is administered through our online procurement portal, which is the portal you would have registered in when you responded to the initial PIN notice. We don't score any responses to the ITT against any weighted criteria, but a number of the responses are assessed as either pass or fail. So here's a list of the pass or fail criteria that is assessed in the invitation to tender. So at this stage, you do have to have an asset that is within the CMZ boundary. You have to confirm your commitment to build the API interface. We'll cover that a little bit later on in the webinar, but that's the communication link that allows us to send you signals and for you to return metering data back to us, and that just needs to be built to enable your participation. And as I said before, the metering data, minute by minute metering data over that API. Your asset needs to be able to respond within 15 minutes of receiving a signal from us and be able to hold that response for a minimum of 2 hours. At the ITT stage, you need to accept and sign our terms and conditions. You need to confirm that each site and asset is built, has a connection agreement, and is energised within the final milestone by the time that the CMZ operating window is going to open. So it's a winter requirement in that CMZ that starts in October or November, for example. You need to confirm that you'll have that those agreements in place by then. And that the provision of the service doesn't put you in breach of any other agreements. So, for example, your connection agreements or any sort of exclusivity agreements that you might have in place with other markets. You also need to confirm your acceptance of the fixed price award. The slides that Ben's going to go through with you in a moment detail our fixed prices that we've established. But we're also looking for market prices and a sort of a best offer. So that needs to be provided to us as well at the ITT stage. And again, acceptance and understanding of when we would award a market price and when we would award a fixed price. So that's it from me. I'm just going to hand you back to Ben now, and he'll talk a little bit more about the contract award.
Excellent. Thanks, Helen. So we've tried to be as transparent and upfront as possible with the contract, and to make sure that people have as much visibility as possible about the types of things that we will require within that contract. So the CMZ contract hasn't changed in this procurement window from the last procurement window, and it's still available up on our website on the tools and documents section. So you can download that. You can have a look at the types of things that you'd have to sign up for. But really, what we've tried to do within the CMZ contract is to make it very simple and very straightforward for you to offer services for us for flexibility. So within that, there are no exclusivity clauses. So if you're able to satisfy our flexibility needs alongside the same timescales and for any other service that you're also trying to provide at the same time, then we don't require any exclusivity. So that shouldn't be a barrier for entry if you've already got existing services, as long as they don't require exclusivity. We've also included no obligation to provide availability. So we know that there will be certain windows or periods across the year which, although we might require a particular service, you as the asset owner and operator might be carrying out some maintenance, or perhaps be looking for an alternative conflicting service, or providing a service for someone else who does require exclusivity. So if that is the case, there shouldn't be any obligation or penalty on our side. You can just not declare yourself available for that particular period, and there's no issues with that within our contract. We also don't apply any penalty for non-delivery. So if you are unable to provide the service in the short term, even though you perhaps might have declared yourself available in the week ahead stage, then the only penalty, well, there'll be no penalty imposed on you. The only mechanism we've got to ensure that you do provide your services is a clawback mechanism, which if you underperform in the period that we require your services, then we will claw back some of the potential revenue that you might be able to generate from participating in those services. And then in order to make sure that there is a fair way of making sure that the liability is spread relevantly across both us and yourself as the flexibility provider, then we've got shared and capped liabilities. So all in all, the contract is as light as we can make it. It doesn't enforce unfair terms, and we hope that this is very much an enabler for you providing services to us. So at the moment, our contract award is a minimum of a year, so we require you to sign up for a year's worth of services. But we're also willing to sign up for longer contracts as well, if that makes your investment case a bit more substantial. So we are happy to issue contracts up to a maximum of 4 years from the initial tender, and it will be up to you as the flexibility provider to determine whether you want a 1, 2 or 4 year contract for those particular services. If you go with a shorter term contract, they naturally form into a rolling month-to-month contract anyway. So there is the option and the likelihood that those contracts will extend out into future years, as long as the terms of the contract are beneficial for both parties. That doesn't mean that should you want just a shorter term contract and then decide not to pursue it in the following years, then you can break out of that contract without any penalties as well. The benefit of us having this rolling contract relationship is that as long as the contract is working out on both sides, then we don't have to retender for that particular service, and we can just carry on offering services to the same provider on and on. However, if you as the participant want to change the service, such as to increase the capacity, then that does need to be re-tendered for. For most of the zones, constraint managed zones that we've got, there is an increase of capacity requirements from our side year on year. So it will be more than likely that we will be tendering out in subsequent years for different zones, but that doesn't necessarily have to be for the whole amount of services. We might just be looking to contract for the increase year on year if we've got enough participants in that zone already. To date, we have only had a couple of zones which have had the full amount of participants in there needing to meet our requirements. So I would say it's very much a seller's market at the moment in terms of flexibility, and we're really keen to try and get people to come on board and start offering services in our area. So once the contract has been awarded, then the schedule was appended to the CMZ terms and conditions, and that details what's been awarded, the applicable price of the award, and the contract expiry date. And on to pricing. So this is a really interesting area. At the moment, distribution flexibility services are very still at an early stage, very nascent. And we are looking to try and build confidence in this market. So uniquely, we've gone out with this fixed price approach of around about £300 per megawatt hour for the duration of the contract. We believe that this gives the flexibility providers a really good understanding about what the expectations of the price of these services is at the moment, rather than having to try and work that through from other pieces of information. However, we also realised that going out with a fixed price is perhaps not delivering the best amount of value, or not really demonstrating a market-led approach when we start getting into competitive markets and once the market is actually established. So this is why we've brought out this pricing strategy. So where we've got uncompetitive markets and insufficient supply compared to demand, then we'll be looking to use a fixed pricing for the duration of the contract. However, once there is sufficient competition, and we define this competition by making sure that there is a sufficient number of participants to satisfy the requirement, plus an additional 2 participants on top of that, so a kind of N+2 test. Then once there is sufficient competition, then we would be looking to use the market price submitted for each of the ITTs by the participants to be able to determine a clearing price for the zone. So basically, we look at the smallest group of participants that can meet our competition test, and then we look at sorting the prices in ascending order to take through the cheapest possible group of participants who could satisfy both the network need and also this competition test. And then we award everyone the same price, a cleared price, based on the highest price submitted within that group. We think this is a really fair way of doing things and ensures a market-based approach to pricing is maintained, whilst also providing fairness back to all the participants. And then finally, phase 3, we expect that once we've got sufficient liquidity in a market, a longer-term procurement route that we're taking at the moment, looking very much, year or 2 years ahead, up to 4 years ahead in some circumstances, for those tenders is probably not the best way to achieve value. So we'll be looking to have a much more real-time market approach to delivering some of these flexibility services, and that will be operating as markets in real-time basis. But I think at the moment, due to the early nature of these markets, that's a kind of much longer-term strategy, and certainly I don't think we'll be getting there in the next 2 to 3 years. So our phase 1 fixed prices, they're still rolling over from the procurement cycle that we had earlier on in the year. So for our secure, then our arming fee is £125 per megawatt hour, and the utilisation is £175 per megawatt hour. On our dynamic, our availability fee is £5 per megawatt hour, with an additional £300 per megawatt hour for utilisation. And then the restore product is just a flat £600 per megawatt hour for utilisation. So one of the processes that Helen talked through is that within the ITT you'll be asked to confirm that you understand that these fixed prices will be used when there is insufficient competition in those areas, and you'll have to agree to that as one of the pass-fail criteria. But of course, if we go into an area where there is sufficient competition, then we'll be moving into this pay-as-clear basis, this phase 2. So in order to make it fairly straightforward and comparable, so for us to be able to compare offers from multiple parties, then rather than having differing amounts and costs for both the availability and the utilisation components, then what we've done is we will be assessing them based on a fixed price product ratio based on differing ratios for the secure and dynamic that mimic the similar types of levels that we expect in the that we are offering out in the fixed price phase 1 basis. So for secure, that's 41.5% for the availability and 58.5% for the utilisation. And for the dynamic, it's 1.6 for the availability and 98.4 for the utilisation. So that enables providers just to provide a single price that covers both availability and utilisation, and it allows us to makes it much easier for us to compare pricing rather than having varying different prices for availability and utilisation. So when the clearing price is determined through that particular process I explained earlier on, then that price will be offered for all tendering parties as well. If, for instance, so the best price that the participants offer to us in the ITT process is not determined by us, and it can be higher or lower than our fixed pricing. There's no limit on that. So it truly is a market-led price. If that price is higher than what the zonal clearing price is, then we will still allow people to supply services in those particular areas, but they would not be called upon or dispatched until all the participants who have bidded in lower prices than that clearing price will have been dispatched first. So there's effectively a kind of tiered priority. So if you offer us a competitive price and that is lower than the zone clearing price, then you will always be offered hours ahead of someone else who has bidded in a higher price that exceeds the zonal clearing price. So it gives a kind of a tiered way for dispatching those flexibility services in that area. So it's quite a complex test there. So I thought we've come up with a few slides that kind of explain the scenario in a bit more detail. So for this particular instance, we need 10 megawatts worth of flexibility to determine our to rebalance our network and resolve our constraints. In this particular scenario, we have exactly 10 megawatts worth of capacity flexibility offered up to us across those different responses. And so in this particular scenario, then because it's not a competitive market here, then everyone is awarded on a fixed price basis. In this particular scenario here, we have more capacity bidding in than that 10 megawatt peak. But if we take away two of those providers, then there still isn't enough capacity to satisfy the need. So if those two blocks in yellow were removed, there is less than 10 megawatts worth of flexibility. So this does not meet our competition test, and so in this case, the tendering parties will all be awarded the fixed price contracts. In our third scenario, then we take away at least two of the submitted prices, and then we can see that there is sufficient competition in this area to actually be determined a competitive market. And so by taking away a number of those largest participants, then there is still enough capacity to meet that 10 megawatt block. So because that has passed the competition test, we now go into further detail to be able to determine what the actual zonal price is. So what we do is we take all of those bids within this particular zone, and we apply a megawatt hour price that those have been submitted as part of the best offer price, and apply them to the different blocks. And then what we do is we sort those into ascending price order, starting from the bottom. So we stack those up, and then what we can see is that there are 4 participants whose capacity added up exceeds that 10 megawatt block, and then we add back in the 2 extra participants that satisfies our N-2 competition test. So our clearing capacity, and the amount that we think is providing a competitive market, is 15 megawatts. So that determines our clearing price. So that zone price there is set then at £10, because the 4 participants who equal the lowest 10 megawatt block plus the extra 2 there, the highest price within that group of participants is £10. So obviously these prices are just example figures. They're not the types of prices that we're expecting to be seen in the market. But in this case here, you can see that the zone price clears at £10, and that will be offered to everyone. So we can see that we discount and put those everyone who's bid above £10 in as a kind of a second tier. So we still offer them a contract, and they will still be able to choose to whether to lower their price to the £10 that we're settling everyone else in. But we would not dispatch them or call them off until everyone in green had offered us their hours that they could make available to us that week and had been dispatched. So it's very much a second tier if you aren't able to offer us a competitive price during the tender process. So then, in terms of timeline and key dates, then we published our zones for flexible power for this second cycle on the 1st of July, and we are now expecting people to start registering, if you haven't already, onto our DPS, and to do so and to be into it with a chance of responding to the ITT, which closes on the 20th of September, then you need to register on the DPS ahead of that. So we recommend everyone who wants to be involved and to see some of the tenders coming out to register on the DPS. As Helen spoke about earlier on, it's quite a light touch to be able to go and get involved and sign on to that DPS. Just require the contact details and for you to agree to the utility contracts regulation pass-fail questions. So it's pretty simple to do so. And if you are registered on the DPS, then when the ITTs opened on the 12th of August, then every single party who's registered on the DPS will be given those tenders. So it's a great chance to be ahead of the curve and getting access to those flexibility tenders as soon as possible. But of course, if you're still umming and ahhing about whether this is for you, then we can still accommodate people within that procurement time window all the way up to just before the 20th of September. But if you approach us after the 20th of September, you will not be able to participate within that particular procurement cycle. That's not necessarily completely bad news, because we do anticipate that most of the constraint managed zones will reopen for procurement in the following year. As I said, in all of the areas there is an increase in flexibility that we require in subsequent years, because our network is demand on the network is growing. So if you've got a few sites that you're not entirely too sure whether you'll be ready to be installed and generating with for the timescales that we're looking at within this procurement cycle, you can always look to the next procurement cycle to go and get involved. It may be that you just want to sign up to the DPS just to go and get a feel for what that ITT and the tenders look like. Equally, if you think that you might be in a stage where, if everything lines up, then you can still operate for that particular window, but you're a bit worried that, there might be a few delays and you might be a month or 2 months delayed or something like that. That isn't necessarily a barrier, because we do not place any penalties on non-delivery and certainly for non-availability declarations. So if you were delayed whilst you were doing some final commissioning tests, or you're still looking to develop the API back into our electronic dispatch platform, then it wouldn't necessarily be penalised for that. You could just not declare availability if you weren't able to provide a service for that particular window, and that shouldn't be an issue. What is fair to say, though, is that the flexibility on the network or the constraints on the network are very much binary. So we do need to have enough flexibility to meet that constraint, or at least those areas with a very low volume of flexibility, we will take a business decision just to crack on with the conventional reinforcement. So if we do have a low volume of interest, we will be looking to close some of those zones. So it's in everyone's interest to make sure that we have enough flexibility provided in those areas. So the expressions of interest is open now, so you can go and get involved. Look at the CMZ information on our scheme's website, and start getting ready for when we issue those ITTs to everyone registered on our DPS on the 12th of August. Our ITT deadline is the 20th of September. There will be no extensions, so that really is a hard deadline. And that will enable us to get our procurement results out pretty quickly after that. So we'll be looking to come out and publish procurement results on the 7th of October. Very similar to like we did in the beginning half of this year. And if you're interested to see what we've already awarded on our website, then details of our previous rounds of procurement and our contract awards are available on the tools and documents section on our website. What we'll be anticipating people to do is, once we've finished that procurement window and have awarded those contracts, then we'd expect the API build to follow quite quickly onto that, and we're really looking for people to start becoming operational as quickly as possible. The sooner you can offer us flexibility on the network, the sooner we can start dispatching you for that, and the sooner you can start making some money from it. So there's quite a lot of information on our website about the schemes and how we run them, and the contracts, our API, other supporting information about our participant portal on the website. So please go on there and have a look. We've tried to do a few new things as well. We've got this value calculator. So if you go on our website and select a particular CMZ and type in the number of megawatts to size a particular asset that you've got in that area, then we will estimate how much value we think you might be able to achieve from that particular site and that really is a true reflection of how much earning potential we think that the sites in those areas are going to be able to be capable of delivering. So any feedback on those numbers will be great. Headline figures are somewhere between £1,500 to £6,000 per megawatt per year. So certainly some benefit there for flexibility participants. We've got our information surgery there on the 7th of August. So if you want to meet face-to-face with some of our flexibility gurus, then request an appointment through the email address there on the screen. We're trying to go and give out as much information out as possible, so we've also got this signposting map. So if you go on to westernpower.co.uk/network flexibility map, then for every single area that we're seeking flexibility or potentially seeking flexibility in the next 5 years, we are putting those, signposting those zones across 4 different industry aligned scenarios. So you can see how much flexibility we might need out into the future. So that should hopefully inform future business cases for when flexibility might be used. And to really demonstrate that we are using flexibility and actually doing things in anger in terms of dispatch, then anyone who is signed up to our updates on our website will receive the flexibility summary. So we look at how much flexibility was unfulfilled in the previous months. So these are areas where we didn't have enough hours of flexibility submitted to us, and that kind of estimates the value. And then we also provide a month ahead forecast for when we actually need that flexibility. So this is much shorter term and better, more accurate estimates about when we expect to be dispatching this flexibility. So even if you haven't got an asset in one of these areas, it's well worth signing up to these emails, and you can play along at home to see whether or not this particular dispatch window would have aligned to your existing or other business cases. So hopefully it will be of use for people to see whether or not they can participate in flexible power. So we've got a few questions coming in. I'll be answering those as a bit of a wrap-up in a couple of slides' time when we've finished. So please, do keep those questions coming in. We have also tried to be open and transparent with our dispatch principles. So we're quite often asked, how we're really dispatching people and how is that communicated. So we've come up with these 5 different principles. Fairness is the kind of overriding key principle there. We really want to drive a liquid and a vibrant market for flexibility within our distribution area. And to do that, we want to share the dispatch of utilisation across as many different people within our area who offer us availability. So if you're participating with flexibility services in our area, the more flexibility you can offer us, the greater the chance that you will be have some hours dispatched. As I said before, there's only a couple of areas where we've got oversupply of flexibility in our network. Most of our flexibility zones are underrepresented in terms of flexibility. So effectively everything that is being offered to us, we are accepting and we are dispatching. But we also want this to be competitive as well. The acceptance of this availability is shared across the largest number of providers, and that really helps us manage the network. So that comes on to the third point, operability. So those participants who are offering the greatest level of operability, so a much wider number of hours across a day, or more times, more chance, more different configurations for us to dispatch, then that will maximise their chance of participation as well. And of course, we need to secure the network, so we will be dispatching and accepting availability and dispatching flexibility based upon ensuring that all of our flexibility needs are met. and to do that there requires a certain level of oversupply compared to our requirements. But of course we need to do that as well to balance the fifth element, which is value. So we want to try and minimise the cost to customers. So by having multiple people offering different levels of flexibility and different operability windows, then that should help us dispatch in a way that meets the minimum level of over-procurement and protects the value for those customers. So in terms of operation, post-award, then we've got a very clear process which is based upon week ahead declarations. So there's a online dedicated customer portal, a participant portal, that enables all the participants to provide their week ahead asset availability. And there's a cut-off there on Wednesday at midnight. So flexibility providers are able to change their windows and change their declarations up until midnight at Wednesday. Then come Wednesday morning, we will be assessing everything that's been declared to us, and then deciding on which ones we're going to accept to take through, and we'll start receiving money based on that availability payments. So by Thursday midday, you will find out exactly what's been accepted, and that allows you to align with other market, short-term reserve products that happen subsequently to that. Through the participant portal as well, then you can receive the start-stop signals. This is through the API. You can also, on the portal, you can view the event performance statements and the earning statements, which I've got a few slides coming up explain a little bit further about that. And then you can also view and approve the monthly invoices based on the services that you provided to us. And all of this information is based on an exchange through our API. So we're unique here, I think, across all the DNOs about having an electronic API dispatch capability. So we expect this protocol to be developed and allows you to exchange all the monitoring information over to us, so we can see exactly what you're doing, and it also allows you to receive our start and stop signals electronically, so that it's a much more robust and automated process to be able to run flexibility between flexible power and your assets. So details of what that API looks like and how to build it are available on our website, on the tools and documents site at flexiblepower.co.uk. On to the performance and earning statements. The performance statement is on the left-hand side here, and this is more a kind of technical display about how you have responded to our service. So we have a grace factor of 95% of the required delivery. So anything above 95%, and you are fully compensated for that. So it's a full-on green tick for service delivery. So you can see that middle section there was above 95%. So that is very much a green tick in that box. Whereas the amber areas there, they are suffering from our performance clawback mechanism. So there is under delivery underneath that 95%. So whilst you're still receiving some revenue from it, it's not as much as what we actually wanted. You can see there are also some periods of red there where the service was dispatched, but it wasn't ramping up quickly enough in time. So for those red periods there, they are significant underperformance where there was no revenue being met. And for the same event, if we look on the earning report on the right-hand side, we can see that these are the window about when there was earning potential, the levels of revenue that you have received in those particular timescales. And we think this is a really helpful set of reports and tools so that people who are participating in our service can see exactly what they're doing and where they need to perform a bit better. Right, on to the final slide, and then I can start answering some of these great questions that have come through. The real key participant benefits that we think of flexible power are really around about this transparency of process. So we've tried to be upfront about what we're putting out to the market. We're more than happy to take feedback and have done so far on various elements. So if there's something in the contract that you think is a real big thumbs down, then please do get back in touch with us. If you think there's some better information that we could be providing to you to help inform your future investment case, or change your decision on whether you might want to participate in services with us, do get back in touch and let us know, because we can and we will improve, definitely. The pricing strategy is something that we've built up there to provide some stability in the early markets, but then allow price discovery in the more mature markets. We hope that's useful. As I said before, the contracts have been really pared down to help enable participation, so hopefully you'd recognise that. And that also allows for stackability with other revenue streams as well. So flexible power definitely isn't an either-or decision. This is something that you can build into your existing portfolio and really be the cherry on the cake in terms of generating revenue through your assets. So through flexible power, we're already working with a number of aggregators to be able to help deliver services. We definitely don't expect flexible power, although it can allow some people to provide some routes for direct entry through the flexible power platform. We definitely don't expect to be working with all 7.9 million customers across our region. We will want our aggregators to come in and help us buddy up with their services and offer wider markets and wider benefits through to customers. So whilst flexible power can directly help people participate in just the DSO services, we expect there's a huge role for aggregation in terms of opening up wider services and making a much better investable business case for the generators and demand-side response services coming into this particular market. So we said we are unique in terms of the electronic availability and dispatch platform and that customer portal as well. Both of those things there greatly help speed up and automate the amount of interaction that we have between those participants, between the aggregators who are operating on our behalf as well, and we expect that to happen and to continue in terms of the automating it. So if you are involved with some of our services and there's a few extra benefits that you think that could be provided by altering the way that our platform operates, then we're definitely taking those into account. We've got a few things up our sleeve to bring out to customers over the next few months as well, which is exciting. So that's all from me and Helen on this webinar. We've just got a bit more time to delve into questions, but if there's some more information that you want to be provided, or there's a few questions that you think might need answering but weren't able to or haven't been able to find an answer anywhere else on our website, then please do get in touch with us. Telephone number is there on the screen, or you can chuck them over across on email. We're more than happy to respond to some of those queries and start sharing some more information where we can. Right, so we're going to dive down into a couple of questions. Got a question here on the benefits of providing assets at the PQQ stage, whether there is any benefit for the asset owner or benefit for WPD at that particular stage. So we definitely don't need the assets to be declared at PQQ stage. Certainly when we're expecting aggregators with large portfolios, then whilst it's helpful to have some visibility of their assets, we don't require that at that kind of PQQ stage. We would expect a bit more detail later on in the ITT process. But there is definitely a benefit for WPD in terms of if you can provide as much visibility of your assets in the PQQ stage, then that means that we can take that information and kind of have a bit of a better understanding about where flexibility might occur in the future. So we don't necessarily, we might not have a zone going out to ITT where you've got some assets at the moment, but if we've got some potential reinforcement requirements in the future, it's a great help for us to know that there is some flexibility that has been offered to us at some stage in the PQQ process, and by seeing that will help us inform our investment decisions going forward. I've got a question on minimum size of participation. So at the moment, what we've said is that there's no minimum size for participation. What there is a technical minimum requirement. So we require any of our participants to be able to provide minute-by-minute metering data through our API. So it doesn't have to be sort of certified metering. We're working with a number of smaller VPPs to use their own monitoring data to be able to provide that information through to us. But we do require for that to be aggregated up and passed through to us on a minute-by-minute basis through the Flexible Power API. So we've at the moment we're dispatching flexibility as a minimum size of 600 watts, so quite small sizes, all the way up to 20 megawatts as well. So no minimum size, but we're working with a number of different partners to be able to provide various different routes to satisfy the flexibility services. But as most of our zones are underrepresented in terms of flexibility, then we really hope to see as many people participate as possible. I've got a question on threshold of allowed unavailability. So I think reading between the lines there, is there a penalty if there is consistent unavailability declared to us, or non-availability declared? So in short, no, there is no threshold. We expect that the revenues that we are providing within Flexible Power are really going to be the carrot for helping people participate, and so we're not applying a stick of penalties or derating if the unavailability is declared within that particular period. I suppose coming back to our dispatch principles, what we do try and do is where we have got oversupply of flexibility in a particular area, we will share the utilization hours and availability hours prorated across the amount of availability declared into us. So those people that have declared a much wider banding of availability will have a greater share of those availability utilization hours. But in terms of sort of innate penalty, then no, there isn't one applied for that particular scenario. I've got another question here on benefits of registering on the DPS. So, why would we do that ahead of time rather than just waiting for the ITT to come out? So it kind of comes back to a previous question on providing visibility of assets under the DPS and then the PQQ stage. It's great for us to be able to see what the amount of flexibility there is available. We, as WPD, are collating those figures, sharing those out within our procurement results documents, and also sharing that information with BAYS as well, and they're very interesting to see how the flexibility market is turning up and whether people are able to participate in distribution services or whether DNOs are seeing a lack of people participate in these services and might have to start investing in reinforcement. So definitely we're really trying to seek out the flexibility wherever that might be required to get an understanding about, is it in the right areas, and is it looking to participate? Is it can it understand and is it aware of these new markets? So a definite benefit of registering on the DPS is that you'll be able to feed into that information, and also you will be, on the leading edge in terms of receiving those ITTs. Excellent. So question here on registration with PICLO. So if I register with PICLO, do I still need to respond to the PIN? So the answer to that is, in short, yes. You do have to respond to the PIN. It's still the same process that you need to follow with flexible power. But when you do register on PICLO, or if you're already registered on PICLO and you have matching assets in an area which we're opening up a tender in, then WPD will be contacting you to kickstart that process. So please make sure that your mailbox or email addresses that you're registered on PICLO in are receiving emails and are responding to those inquiries. I've got a question here on API build. So who's responsible for building the API? Is there a hardware option? So we expect the participants themselves to build the API. There's not a hardware option for building that out. It is purely electronic. We think this is the best way to go, just software to software communications rather than having to build a box that we might have to come and fit on site. By doing this API development, it also means that should we open up new zones where you've got future assets that are available to participate, there's no repetition in terms of the API, so it really is very scalable. Hopefully we think that will be of significant benefit to aggregators and to VPPs and other large generation portfolio providers, in that they can use the same API development to then release multiple zones and drawing down benefit from other areas into the future. Excellent. Okay. So I think that is all we have in terms of questions. If there are any further questions, then we've got the email box on the screen as it is at the moment. But I think that's it from the webinar today. So thank you for your time. We hope we'll see some of you face to face on the 7th of August if you want to go and get involved with that flexibility face to face discussions and surgery. But if not, we're always at the end of the phone to chat. So please do get in touch. But we thank you for your time today. I hope to see you at some of our events in the future. Okay, thank you.